there were so many bands that emerged out of the Laurel Canyon scene. And one of the things that we're going to find that is the primary premise of the book is almost all of these bands had within their family background military intelligence, some form of military ties, political ties. I'm going to name some of the bands out of Laurel Canyon because there's so many. The Byrds, the Doors, Buffalo Springfield, the Monkees, the Beach Boys, Steppenwolf, Love, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, the Turtles, the Mamas and the Papas, the Flying Burritos Brothers, the Eagles, America. There was the singer-songwriters, Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Carole King. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's amazing how much talent poured out of such a tiny geographic area over such a very short period of time.
It's remarkable. One of the things I was going to ask you, just so people get a grasp of what we're talking about here, I'm going to ask you about a couple of people, and you tell me what their relationship was to these military backgrounds, because some of these people were, I couldn't believe it. Papa John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas.
He was the son of a career Marine Corps officer who also various other members of his family were very closely tied to the military as well. His mother, his older sister, and his first wife were all career Defense Department employees. So, I mean, pretty much his entire family, everyone around him was a career military person, and he himself was initially prepped for a military career. I believe he was a West Point appointee or Annapolis, one of the two. I get confused because so many of these people have such very similar backgrounds. So yeah, his entire family pretty much was from the military background, and not only that, but his first wife was also a direct descendant of John Adams, the second president of the United States, which is another thing that you will find is that some of these people, in addition to having a military or military intelligence background, a lot of them kind of come from what we could call like royal sort of blue blood bloodlines, so to speak. That's another commonality that a lot of these people share.
Well, speaking of blue bloods, the most unlikely person, David Crosby of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and he was in the Byrds as well.
He was in the Byrds.
Talk about David Crosby, because he's an enigmatic character.
Yeah, he was a Byrd, one of the founding members of the Byrds, the original members, and the guy who emerged as the biggest star. I mean, the name that we remember today, most people don't remember Gene Clark and Chris Hillman and even Roger McGuinn and Gene Clark is and the drummer wasn't Michael Clark. Most of them are, unless you're a real hardcore fan of that era, they're long forgotten. But David Crosby, of course, still lives on as an iconic figure. And like a lot of the people, most of the people who emerged from that scene as the big iconic figures, he has a very curious family background. Yeah, his full name is David Van Cortlandt Crosby. And he is a direct descendant of three interrelated families: the Van Cortlandts, the Van Rensselaer, and the Van Schuyler families. And if you look them up, bounce around Wikipedia for a while, you will find that his family tree includes just people occupying virtually every position of prominence that you can imagine, back to the founding of the country. Revolutionary War generals, Civil War generals, judges, senators, congressmen, governors, just everything short of the president. Various members of his family have occupied for well over 200 years now. So yeah, definitely a blue blood type of family. And his father, did naval intelligence work during World War II. So.
Well, Stephen Stills in the same band was an interesting character as well.
Stephen Stills was actually in Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah,
they were like they were sort of they were kind of the first two out of the gate, the first two kind of folk rock bands that really set this whole thing off. And of course they then later joined forces as Crosby, Stills and Nash, but. Yeah, Stephen Stills, his father appears to have been some type of a covert operative. He's described in various biographies as a mercenary or soldier of fortune or various euphemisms, and he spent a lot of time bopping around various hot spots in Central and South America where, you know, it just happened to be places where we had a lot of covert operations going on, and so Stephen moved around a lot, and you know, to various grew up partially in military bases and military schools in and around Central America. So yeah, once again, you know, one of the person who emerged as the sort of biggest figure from the original band, Buffalo Springfield. Yeah, once again has the same, which we find time after time after
Frank
time.
Zappa.
Frank Zappa, yeah, of course, the leader of the Mothers of Invention. Not a band that ever really achieved the commercial success and popularity that a lot of these other bands do, and still to this day, you won't really hear much of their music on the radio, almost never, but yet a hugely influential with other musicians, just viewed as a
Incredible musician.
Yeah, incredibly talented guy. You know, we wore all the hats. You know, songwriter, musician, producer, arranger. You know, he could do it all. Yeah, phenomenally talented and influential guy, and also he started up a couple of record labels in Laurel Canyon.
That's right.
And introduced a lot of the other. He was the guy who got a lot of other bands their start.
Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, yeah, strangely enough, was yeah, not really thought of as being a part of that Laurel Canyon scene, but yeah, sure enough, he was. They were. The band was. But Zappa's father was a chemical warfare engineer, initially assigned to the Edgewood Arsenal, which is where Frank was born and spent the first 7 years of his life. They actually lived in military housing on the base, and he went to school and lived the first 7 years of his life at the home of U.S. chemical warfare, strangely enough. So, you know, yet again, rather curious, you know, family background